And so we begin 1988, with no releases for a full month after the previous one. If you just look at quantity of releases, 1988 doesn't seem that much worse than 1987. The new year will bring 54 releases compared to 69 the year before. But the raw numbers are concealing some deeper problems. The year brought a new marketing push for the Famicom Disk System. Its new slogan was, "The more you play it, the more you learn about it." Don't know why that didn't sell the FDS to people. You might remember how the Disk System's launch had a lot of re-releases of early Nintendo titles. Well, those are coming back. We'll have 9 games that are basically re-releases, though a couple of them do get updates. And half the games published for the Famicom Disk System in 1988 come from just 3 companies. We'll also start seeing a small trend of publishers developing games for the US market and then releasing the ones that they don't think will do well in Japan on the Disk System. And right here we have a case in point with Ice Hockey, a final Nintendo game where the title is just a sport. They'll have to add Mario to those titles if they want something in the future. Hockey is a game without a strong following in Japan. There's so few professional teams that the Japanese league actually disbanded, and the teams were integrated into a Pan-Asian league. And there's never been a hockey boom period in Japan, like soccer, baseball, and even basketball have enjoyed. So Ice Hockey wasn't a game made for the Japanese market. Ice Hockey isn't really a proper simulation of hockey. Or maybe both teams got penalties right at the start of the game, and so they can each only have 4 men plus the goalie on the ice. But that said, stripping it down like this makes it work really well on this console. Ice Hockey is the first single-sided floppy game we've seen in quite a while. So this is a small game running on tech that's already underpowered by 1988, and it still plays pretty well. When you start, you get your pick of 6 teams, which just changes what color you're playing as, and you can choose how fast the game plays and how long a period is. The speed is not a difficulty setting. Okay, I guess it's harder to play when the speed is cranked all the way up, but it's not intended as a difficulty setting. The first team that you play against will always have the same level of skill, and then after you beat them and select your next opponent from the remaining teams, they're a little bit better, and so on until you've defeated all of the teams. Once you've selected your team speed and duration, then you get to the real innovation of Ice Hockey, selecting your players. And rather than having a bunch of stats where it's not really clear what effect they're having, if any, Ice Hockey breaks this down into a simple 3 options. Are your guys big and brawny, tiny and fast, or somewhere in between? For the 4 members of your team that will be skating around the rink, you pick one of those 3 options. Though they're not really 100% balanced. The skinny guys can move that puck all over the place, but that's the only thing they're good for. They'll have a hard time making a goal, unless you're playing against another human player who you can fake out, so you'll need them to pass to another player. You do that by pressing the A button, which also cycles which player you're controlling. The big guys are all about power. They might move slowly, but they can knock over other players just by bumping into them. And when it comes time to shoot, they shoot harder and faster. You shoot by pressing the B button, and you can hold that down for a stronger shot. You can also tap B for a fake out, which the computer AI tends to fall for a lot. So between their ability to bully their way around the rink, and the extra power they can put into getting goals, the big guys are generally a better option for your team. Which isn't to say that they're invincible. If you skate up to one who has the puck and mash the B button, there's a good chance that even a little guy could knock them over and take the puck. A team of 4 burly men is going to do better than a team of 4 skinny guys, but they're still going to be outperformed by a balanced team. Well, balanced in the sense that there's a mixture of players, not balanced in the sense that all 4 players are average. Just like real hockey, there's 3 periods, and at the end of the second period, some guys in hockey masks come out to Zamboni the ice. Every sports game has to have some kind of cutscene at this point. The game has penalties, but the only one I ever see is icing, which is mysterious if you're not a fan of hockey, but all it means is that someone on the opposing team shot the puck and it wound up behind the goal. You can also get a penalty for fighting, which will remove a man from your team for 2 minutes, but this is pretty rare and hard to trigger. I spent this entire match trying to beat up other players, and it just never occurred. When there's a face-off on the ice, you can press a direction on the control pad to swap the positions of players. That'll change who's actually in the face-off, as well as if they're playing up or down or forward or back. Not necessarily the most useful of options, but it gives you a little something more to work with. If the game is a tie at the end of all 3 periods, then you get into a penalty shootout where your ability to control the goalie is put to the test. When you're playing, you always have control over the goalie, moving them up and down and a little bit back and forth. At least in situations where once the puck gets kind of close to your goal, you need to ignore the rest of your team and just concentrate on steering the goalie around. Now, even though ice hockey isn't a popular sport in Japan, Nintendo's ice hockey is relatively popular there. Or at least fans of 8-bit gaming point to it as one of the best sports games of the era. And yes, this is pretty good. I think it works better when you're playing with another human, just like most sports games. As I mentioned, the AI is very prone to getting beaten by fake-outs. This is a game where the action is fast, doesn't really slow up, and there's just enough variation to keep players on their toes. You could even handicap yourself by taking a lot of skinny guys if you're playing against someone who's not as good. Nintendo's ice hockey was a swan song to that era of Nintendo sports games, and it was a pretty good one.